welcome to episode 3 of Life, Leadership, and Love. This episode is going to be entitled Leadership Without Titles. The theme for today's episode is Everyday Leadership Rooted in Service, Integrity, and Community. We're just very honored to have you all back with us again here for this episode. We thank you for continuing to support this podcast. And just wanted to retouch on a couple of the big themes and items that we discussed in episode 2, which is really about looking at place, roots, and values as it relates to the issues that we're dealing with on a daily basis, and especially about partnership and relationships and those kind of things. And so, and how we grow as individuals and how place, roots, and values impacts that. So it was a good episode. I thought we had a really good discussion about that aspect. And this sort of carries into our discussion today, which is all about leadership without titles.
Yes, it'll be interesting. I look forward to the discussion.
As do I. So again, we just thank you all for being here with us. Today, we're going to be talking about leadership without titles, the kind of leadership that shows up quietly, consistently, and often without any recognition. And we sometimes come across this, whether it be in our workplace or whether it be at home or in volunteer places where we're volunteering. Those kind of opportunities present themselves. And we want to talk a little bit about that and how do we go about, even talking about exercising those leadership muscles. So we're going to have a really good conversation around that. And I just kind of wondering, when we think about leadership without titles, like what comes to mind when people hear the word leader? Like what do you think people are, if I use the word, hey, that person's a leader, she's a leader, he's a leader, what do you think comes to people's minds?
Well, when I think of a leader, I think of someone who effectively can mentor, bring people together, and not necessarily the loudest speaker or the best speaker, but effective leadership is someone who not only can bring people together and create a successful outcome, but someone who listens intently and serves people for the right reason.
Yeah, and I think leadership also involves trust.
Yes.
I think integrity, right? And positivity, right? Because we've all encountered those leaders who are extremely negative and who really don't embody that sort of trustworthiness. And I can tell you, it's not, at least from my perspective, it is not fun having to work underneath leaders like that, because you really do feel like you're working underneath that person, right? In a sense. And so I kind of want to talk a little bit about too, why do titles, whenever we think about leadership or leaders, I think many of us gravitate towards what is their title, right? Oh, that person's the president, or that person's the director, or that person is the vice president, or whatever it might be. But we always tend to think that leadership is associated with titles, but that's not necessarily true, is it?
Some of the most effective leaders that come to mind are not necessarily officers in their organizations, but yet they bring people together so successfully.
Yeah.
They're generally, some of them are very quiet. You don't even really, when you think of the organization, entity, department, those people may not necessarily come to mind, but they are so effective. Quiet leader.
Behind the scenes.
Yep.
Bringing people together.
Yes. Some of them are like the most effective
Common
in
cause.
an organization. Yeah.
Yeah, I agree.
They're not seeking attention. They're just quietly working behind the scenes to make the outcome successful.
Yeah, I couldn't have said it better. Before we share our own experiences about leadership without titles, I want to talk a little bit about what leadership without a title actually looks like. What does that actually look like? And so let's think about that for a moment, because I think all of us have been in situations, whether it be, again, at work or at home or in a volunteer atmosphere, or some sort of responsibility like that, where we are faced with an opportunity to take on different roles and responsibilities that maybe isn't in our job description or isn't part of what I signed up to do when I decided that I was going to volunteer for XYZ nonprofit or organization, or even what I thought would be my role and responsibility as a father, or or a spouse, those kind of things. But what's, I think, important is that when we are faced with those opportunities, we don't shy away.
Yeah.
We take them on, and we do so with a certain level of vigor and intent, right, to be positive and be successful in achieving those tasks or whatever is in front of us at that point in time.
I think what probably prevents people from taking on roles beyond maybe what they're comfortable with is fear. There's so many people who I can think of who I know are great, successful people, but to have them agree to taking on a supervisory role or taking like a promotion creates fear. That fear of change, the fear of not being successful in the new role prevents them from taking on opportunities. But in your heart, they would be so effective
if they would just walk through that door.
Yep.
And be willing to try something new, and don't worry about the outcome, whether or not you're going to be successful. But as long as you approach that task or whatever it is with the right intent, that's the most important thing, because that is how I often say that leadership, we all have, there are people that are born leaders. They're born, they're charismatic. They can really just attract people to follow them and do things. Born leaders. But then you have the rest of us, which is probably the majority of people, who have the leadership seed, if you will, in them that just needs to be watered, or they have that leadership muscle that needs to be exercised. And the big step that people need to be willing to take is to, in fact, to exercise that leadership muscle, to be able to use opportunities as a way to grow and to do some really positive things. And leadership is not necessarily about authority. We oftentimes associate leadership with authority. And yes, that may be true, that there are situations where leadership comes from authority, but there's also leadership that comes from influence. Kind of like what you were talking about. You have employees or people on a team, or an individual on a team who maybe isn't the leader of the team, but is able to galvanize other team members to rally around the team leader and to be able to overcome whatever the issue is that they're faced with and they're trying to solve as a team. And so it's that leadership as influence that I think is a really important aspect that people sometimes they forget, that is actually a really excellent quality to have and to be able to use as a leader. And there's also leadership as responsibility versus control, right? Because sometimes we, as leader, there are leaders out there who lead through control, right? They're very controlling. They set these very tight guidelines and parameters within which employees can work and do their jobs, and they're not allowed to sort of take on any additional responsibilities that are outside of whatever it is that's been assigned to them. But yet then there's also leaders who really empower their staff or their team to be able to take on new responsibilities so that they can grow. And I really respect leaders that do that, because now you're helping to build that next generation of leaders that are going to be coming up, whether it be at work or, again, in a volunteer environment or wherever that might be, including even at home. When you think about children, right, that maybe you're raising and giving them that ability to have responsibilities such as chores and various aspects of family life that can help build that leadership and strengthen that leadership muscle. And it really is about service, and it's not necessarily about status.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I totally agree.
Yeah. So, as we think about leadership without titles, what are some examples of leadership that people may just overlook and not really know that that's leadership?
When I think of leadership, and even in our discussion, we're talking about like workplaces,
Mm-hmm.
but leadership is in every place we're in, right? Whatever venue we're at, whether it be a club, at home, workplace, whatever, there are leaders. They may not necessarily identify themselves as leaders, but they are. Whether it's their ability to mentor, inspire, teach, lead by example. There's so many leaders who are not necessarily defined as leaders, but they are.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and I think we've all come across those people, right, in different places. And the key is unlocking that and allowing them to grow and having that willingness to take on new and additional responsibilities as it relates to whatever it is that they're focused on. And just, again, giving that opportunity to people who really can be amazing and incredible leaders, I think is very important.
Yes. And you mentioned, some leaders are born leaders. Some grow into strong leaders. And I think of my late dad.
Mm-hmm.
As you know, Keith, my dad was the introvert of all introverts. He was an extremely shy person. He didn't like to communicate, even to his classmates.
Mm-hmm.
He didn't go to any school dances, much less give any speeches. His high school yearbook in his senior year, his quote under his photo was "Silence is golden." And he had such a fear of communicating and interacting with people. He developed a stuttering problem.
Mm-hmm.
And it continued in college. It continued as a young adult in the workforce, in the workplace. And it wasn't until a colleague encouraged him to join Toastmasters that he learned to get out of his shell.
Mm-hmm.
He eventually gave a speech to his fellow Toastmasters, eventually served as president, and eventually overcame his stuttering problem. And over time, he became a county administrator in the engineering division of the county. And so it's unlocking and taking on those opportunities that could be that water for a seed to grow.
Yeah, I agree with you completely. And for our listeners who may not know what Toastmasters is really a leadership program that also focuses on strengthening your ability to be a good public speaker and communicator. So it's an excellent program. Both Lynn and I are members of Toastmasters.
And our son is, too.
And our son is as well. Yes, thank you for reminding me. And it has been transformational for us. But it is a very powerful program that can really help bring people out of their shells and give leadership opportunities so that they can, again, water that seed or exercise that muscle, however you want to look at it, but to really be able to grow on a personal level and become better, stronger leaders, whether it be in their career or whether it be on in their volunteer roles and responsibilities, whatever aspect of their life, including family life, quite frankly, it can really truly help you. So it is a great program. I encourage you to go and take a look at it. And if you're interested, please consider joining, because it can really open up doors for you from a leadership and communication standpoint. So we've talked a lot about leadership without titles, and I want to talk a little bit about sort of that personal, aspect of leadership without titles, and talk about quiet leadership, and maybe bring it a little bit more closer to home, like quiet leadership in the community and what some of that looks like.
Well, when I think of quiet leaders, the first person who comes to mind is our former governor, Governor George Ariyoshi.
Mm-hmm.
For those Gen Zs and people younger than we are, you may not have witnessed Governor Ariyoshi's leadership, but he was quiet but extremely effective.
Yep.
When I think of quiet leadership, it's not necessarily the loudest voice in the room. It's about being the most present one. It's about leadership rooted in values of humility, in perseverance, in respect and responsibility to the community. Leadership that's not often experienced through grand speeches, but through steady action, through careful listening, and an unwavering sense of duty. I think of Governor Ariyoshi. And there are many other people out there, but at least here in Hawaii, when I think of quiet leadership, I think of him.
Yeah, he was a very steady hand as a governor, and actually was very instrumental in ensuring our fiscal stability back in the 70s and 80s. And so he was a very quiet yet effective leader who built a very good cabinet that was very focused on ensuring a successful future for the state of Hawaii that all of us here have benefited from, quite frankly. And even when you think about the Governor Ariyoshi, as well as other governors, I reflect on at least the governors that I've known since I've been here in Hawaii since 1989. And by the way, I have had a chance to meet Governor Ariyoshi. I've also met Governor Waihee, Governor Cayetano, Governor Lingle, Governor Abercrombie, Governor Hike, and I actually currently work for Governor Green. And all of them have been incredible leaders. They're not loud, boisterous. They're not, they're just very effective leaders in what they do. And they've really helped to build the state into what it is today. And so we're very fortunate to have that kind of leadership at the top here within the state. Now, my thing is that I wanted to get back to, as it related to Governor Ariyoshi, was the incredible work that his wife did, putting together the foundation that has been taking care of Washington Place for many, many years now. And she didn't do that for fanfare or to get limelight or anything like that. She really did it because she cared about that beautiful, beautiful building that has such historic and cultural value to the state of Hawaii because of its history, that she went ahead and was that leader, right, that was able to put that together.
Why don't you maybe, because some listeners may not be familiar with the structure that you're talking about, maybe you could maybe provide some background?
Yeah, Washington Place, for those of you that have never been to Washington Place, is located near off of Baratania Street. It was the former residence of Queen Liliuokalani. It does have some connection to the overthrow, where she was held there for a period of time. She was also imprisoned at Iolani Palace, but she was also then, I think, paroled to Washington Place for a while, and then eventually was lived out her life there at Washington Place. And upon her passing, the property actually became the governor's mansion. And so for many, many years, it actually served in that role where governors and their spouses and their children were raised in Washington Place. So it's a very old historic home, has a lot of cultural importance and significance to the people of Hawaii. And it's beautiful. And if you ever have a chance to go there, you can sign up for tours and you can learn about the history of the building itself and really appreciate some of the historic nature of downtown Honolulu through the eyes of the docents that are there, that just lead these incredibly enriching tours that people can learn about. And just so everybody knows, the governor's, I think it was after Cayetano, or could have been during Cayetano's time, Governor Cayetano's time, that a new home was built pretty much on the same property, but about maybe 100, 150 feet away from the historic residence. And all the governors now live in that home. They don't actually live in the historic Washington Place any longer. They do host dinners there for VIPs, heads of state that might be coming in and that kind of thing. But for the most part, it is really just, it's essentially a museum when you think about it. And highly encourage people to go and take a look and enjoy that. Yes, it is. And, when I think about leadership too, and quiet leadership, I think about the docents that are there. Yeah. Honestly, they're the ones that are taking care of the place. And, there's also the executive director who is there, and he's just always caring for and watching over this incredibly important historic place. All of them are, and they're doing it quietly. But it is true leadership that they exude day in and day out to protect that place.
Yeah, they have important roles.
Mm-hmm. So, leadership without titles can also be learned through experience, and especially when you're new to a place or community. And that, I think, is a really important perspective to talk about, because for me, at least, having not been born and raised in Hawaii, it did take me time, right, to be able to build trust and for people to get to know me as a person, to learn more about what drives me as an individual, what's important to me. But it also gave me an opportunity to learn a new culture and embrace a new culture and to incorporate that into my being and to help me become a better leader. But that requires being open-minded and being willing to absorb and assimilate and accept new ways of thinking and new approaches.
And listening.
Listening is extremely important, yes.
A lot of people think they know it all. They come to Hawaii wanting to tell us what's right in their mind.
Right.
They're not listeners, and they're not building trust, right? Whereas I think when you and your family moved to Hawaii in 1989, you were open.
Yeah, as I spoke in episode 2, I had the opportunity to really be mentored, if you will, by good friends who stepped up and wanted to ensure that I would be able to be accepted and that I would be able to learn and accept this new culture that I was in. Because for me, I felt like this I could really see Hawaii as being my home. And although I was born and raised in Massachusetts and spent 17 years of my life there, when I landed on the shores here, when I came from the continent and we landed in Maui and we started to get situated, it was through those friendships, those partnerships that were built, that I was being essentially trained, right, to be more open-minded and willing to learn and willing to take on new roles and new responsibilities. And in very quiet, humble ways.
Yeah. That's what I love about you.
Well, that's what I love about you too. You're so
So
quiet and humble. You are. And, I would just say this, that for those of you who might be listening that maybe are not from Hawaii, that maybe just came to Hawaii from the continent or from somewhere else, just be open-minded and understand that this place has so much to offer. The people here have so much to offer. The culture has so much to offer. The traits and the values and just the perspectives that you can gain by being open-minded will change you forever in a very positive way. So I would just ask you that you lead by earning trust and not by claiming space.
Totally agree.
Yep. So, I think about some of this and reflecting on, our paths and the things that we've done over the years and how they've been different. But we've both seen how leadership without titles shapes strong communities.
Yeah, I totally agree. And I think it's important to connect leadership to partnership and everyday life. How leadership, and you know what, we talked about not having titles, right?
Mm-hmm.
But how leadership shows up in relationships,
Yep. Teamwork.
Leading together without any hierarchy, and supporting each other.
Yes. It's so important. Yeah, that is so very important, because honestly, without having that support from your spouse or your significant other, it really makes it difficult, right? To be able to lead, especially through difficult situations, in an effective way. So I think this relationship that, at least from our perspective, has been very beneficial, for us, because when I need help, I know that you're there for me. And when you need help, I'm there for you. And we share a lot of different, we're involved in a lot of different organizations together. And because of that, I think we kind of are able to help each other through some of those challenges. And it's not necessarily that we're in leadership roles in every organization, but because we're involved, we eventually take on different activities or get involved in different activities together.
I love our partnership.
Yeah, it's pretty amazing. It is pretty amazing. And I just kind of, I think about like how we support leadership in others, because I'm not so worried about my leadership opportunities. I'm worried about sort of that next generation of leaders who are out there. And one of the things that I regularly try to do in my at least in my professional role, is to give responsibilities that are maybe pushing the envelope a little bit, right? And maybe outside of the norm. I'm not saying like extremely challenging responsibilities, but responsibilities that will help these people grow so that they can take on new roles that might present themselves in the career ladder.
Yeah. That's so important. And there's, we've been in so many different organizations over the years, and there are some who believe that their worth is, being the sole person with certain knowledge and ability to perform tasks. But to me, an effective leader is being able to ensure that in the event you're to disappear tomorrow, right, that the organization can continue on.
Absolutely.
To instilling people, others, responsibilities. So if you were to, like I said, disappear tomorrow, the entity can continue forward.
Yep.
That is so important.
Absolutely. Well, this has been a really great talk. I really have enjoyed this time talking about leadership without
I have
titles.
too.
And I hope that our listeners have as well. We just want to thank you for being a part of this with us on this journey. And we really enjoyed speaking about these leadership without titles and how it might impact us, and then also maybe inspire some of you who might be listening to go out and stretch those leadership muscles and water those leadership seeds that you have within you, because we think many of you have that incredible opportunity to be stronger, better leaders. It's just taking that first step.
Yes, I totally agree.
So get out there and do it. And we look forward to our next episode. And next time we're going to be talking about how service shapes purpose and why giving back often gives us more than we expect. Again, we just thank you for being with us and being present with us. Mahalo for listening, and thank you for the ways that you lead, seen and unseen. Mahalo and aloha.
Aloha. Thank you.